The Simpson-Bowles Commission on the Federal Deficit recommended several things: that the country cut the federal workforce through attrition and freeze pay, that it close overseas military bases, cap spending at home, raise the gasoline tax, curtail the mortgage interest deduction, set aside a fund for natural disasters, raise the payroll tax for Social Security, and phase in higher retirement age, reduce entitlements as well as farm subsidies and civilian and military pensions, and it recommended a lower but more broadly and fairly collected system of taxation. Why hasn't this become at least the beginning of a serious discussion about reducing the federal deficit?
Well, I think it was a starting point, and there are a lot of good ideas in that particular commission. But what we're really stuck with is ultimately you have to put the whole thing into a budget to make it work. And so you have to balance those different component elements and say, what's a reasonable approach? It's a little bit like what families have to do. And in the 2 years that Republicans have controlled the House, we've had a budget both years. The budget has been set up for a vote, and the budget has passed. Was it the budget that I would have written? No. It wasn't quite as conservative as I would have written, because I would like to see us get to a balanced budget sooner. But it was still a reasonable approach that puts us back on track to recovery. Those budgets, of course, go where? To the Senate. What happens when we send bills to the Senate? They die. The budget sat in the Senate and died. The other budget sat in the Senate and died. We got 30 bills to try to help jobs in the economy. They're sitting in the Senate and died. That's the reason I'm running for the Senate, because the Senate can't get anything done. And it's a federal law that we're supposed to have a budget every year, and the Senate can't do that. And I don't think the debt ceiling increase and another 10%, the sequestration on defense, is a good excuse for not doing what the law says, which is to pass a budget.
Claire McCaskill?
Well, I agree with Congressman Aiken that the Simpson-Bowles proposal has some good ideas in it, and we need to work off that framework. In fact, that was the framework that the President and Speaker Boehner were working off of when they got an agreement last summer prior to us passing a budget in the law, in the Budget Control Act. And they were going to try to move $4 to $5 trillion of debt off the books with a compromise. The Tea Party in the House shut it down and said, no, we're not going to go for that compromise. We are working on a bipartisan basis in the Senate every day to try to cobble together a plan that will reduce $4 to $5 trillion in debt, and I'm part of that group. Yes, I think we do need to reduce some mortgage interest. I don't think anybody buys a second home because of the mortgage interest deduction. Let's start there. I think we should look at whether or not we can take a little haircut on charitable deductions. I think we need to look at cutting farm payments. In fact, we did in the Farm Bill. We stopped all direct payments in the Farm Bill. We saved $23 billion in spending in a bipartisan Farm Bill that Senator Blunt and I worked hard on and worked together across the aisle with a lot of Republicans and Democrats, sent it over to the House. What is more important for certainty in Missouri than a Farm Bill? Our economy depends on it, and it's sitting in the House. It's sitting in the House with no action, and it expires in a matter of a few days. I think less than 6 or 7 days, it expires. They didn't even take it up to vote on it. That's the kind of gridlock that we don't need in Washington.
Jonathan Dine?
I agree with a lot of the ideas in the commission, except for the gasoline tax. I think Americans already now pay enough at the pump. There's a 17-cent gallon tax on every gallon sold, which actually generates $100 million in revenue a day for the federal government. Just like anything else, it's mismanaged and spent recklessly. We should have really nice roads for that much money. I think that it doesn't go far enough. We really need, the reason I think a lot of those things were not implemented was something I think kind of covers America's political class, which is political cowardice. Afraid to take on the real issues because they are campaigning, because they are worried about re-election. You know, we do need to make some serious choices in this, if we do want to save what we have. You know, and I think it takes someone who's willing to say no to reckless spending, say no to the corporate interests, someone who's willing to just work for the people and let the people keep the money in their pockets where it belongs.
Congressman Todd Aiken, there were some issues raised about the Farm Bill and some other things. Would you like a rebuttal there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it would straighten one thing out here, and that is, I keep hearing that we passed a budget in the Senate. Look, we have not passed a budget in the Senate in 1,200 days. And increasing the debt ceiling is not the same thing as a budget. Increasing the debt ceiling, we do it over and over again, as though we could just keep spending money and keep printing money. We can't do that. But that bill also included what resulted in the sequestration. That is a second 10% cut in defense. And Panetta was asked, Panetta is the Secretary of Defense appointed by Obama. He's not some sort of Republican right-winger or anything. And he is asked, is this like shooting yourself in the foot? He said, no, this is like shooting yourself in the head. That's what Claire is bragging about, voting for that thing and calling it a budget. It's not a budget. It's a disaster.
Claire McCaskill.
I think I should use a phrase that's been used often, read the bill. I think Congressman Aiken, if he'll read the bill, he'll find the language specifically that says, this act shall serve as the budget resolution for the fiscal year in question. It lays out the fiscal year. And then there's another phrase, this act shall serve as the budget resolution, and it lays out the next year. And then you can read the bill. You can read the budget in the bill. Go on my website. You can read it. It's there. It's in the law. And guess what happened this year? The appropriators followed it. The appropriators followed it. We cut direct payments, which was hard for many Missouri farmers to swallow, but we did it. It was a hard vote in the Senate. We did it on a bipartisan basis. The Farm Bill is essential to Missouri. We need to get at the work of getting the Farm Bill done.
Jonathan Dine, did you want 45 seconds on the deficit?